Hey guys, it's Danny. Today we are continuing with a sort of part 2 to the video of yesterday, having to do with identifying the orchids that we purchase without flowers, mainly on a discount. And today we're gonna focus more on the care that we should give to these orchids. As I was telling you in my previous video, most orchids take pretty much the same care once you figured out the family they belong to. But there is a special family called the Oncidium and Intergenerics, which is quite diverse. And members of the very same family can have different care requirements. And as it just so happens, I purchased myself an Intergeneric. So what do we do from here? So without further ado, here are the first steps that we should take with any new orchid, no matter if we know what it is or not. After they're done with flowering, Oncidium type orchids and their hybrids don't rebloom from the very same flower spike. So when you purchase your discounted orchid, you'll probably see the old flower spike, the stump, dried, or you'll still have the flower spike dried or almost dry on the orchid. At this point, you can cut it off. It will not rebloom, it will not rebranch. This is not a phalaenopsis, sadly. Also, after they bloom, most intergenerics start to grow vegetatively, meaning they will start to produce a new pseudobulb. And this is how one new pseudobulb looks like. It starts out as a pretty leafy formation, as you can see. So at this point, the orchid is ready to produce new roots as well, from the new growth that is growing, but also a little bit from the older growth. It's also a perfect time for repotting because we don't know what we'll find in this pot. Usually we find pests, most importantly the bush snail. Here in Europe at least, all of them have them. So we can definitely start repotting this orchid. Before we repot it, we need to think about what we're gonna pot it in. Well, all intergenerics and Oncidium types, they are epiphytic orchids, so we should not put them in soil. So we should go for a medium that permits aeration. Most probably our orchid is not potted in the best medium possible. It might have been okay in the nursery or in the short time it's spent in it, but for our home it might not be okay. Now usually these orchids, they do prefer their moisture, so going for bark only is not necessarily the best of things. Unless you grow your orchids in a very humid or not so warm climate or growing space. If you do tend to have pretty dry air, and you know you're not a good waterer, then definitely go for a more water retentive but aerated medium. If you want to go for inorganic, Oncidium and Intergenerics generally are perfect for semi-hydroponics, and that's what we shall use today. So the orchid has already spent one night in a good environment. It is also hydrated because we watered it one day before. It's in active growth at this point. We can go ahead and repot it. So just like with any other orchid, we are going to get rid of all of the old medium. No matter what new medium you prefer to use or you're gonna use with the orchid, just get rid of this. It's old anyway. You don't know if it has pests, you don't know how decomposed and degraded it is. I can already see I have munched root tips, look at this, and I already see my snail. Do you see it here? There we go. So just get rid of the old medium as much as possible. I'll also sterilize the root system to get rid of the pests, but we'll get there. So first, gently try to remove as much of the old medium as possible. And this is a step you can do with any orchid, not only intergenerics. If you have a dendrobium, it should be repotted. Same goes for a cattleya or a phalaenopsis. So I'll go ahead and remove this medium. It's gonna take a while, but I wanna take my time, and I'll come back when I'm done. Alrighty, I am halfway done. You can see I removed as much of the old medium as possible here at my working table, and then I went with the orchid at the sink and just ran water through the root system. That made pretty much all of the debris just fall in the sink. But I'm not finished yet. I still have some things clinging to the root system. I thought I should just make my life a little easier. Now, I took a look at the root system and I noticed half of it, at least, is dead. I know it is because I have roots that look like this. Do you see that string? That is the actual root. Do you see the outer coating coming off from that root? This is the velamen that died off. Inside, the root is dead as well. You'll also notice that you have roots which do not come off like that when you pull on them. These are the live roots. So at this point, I want to get rid of all of the older roots, and I have a lot of them that are dead and of no use to the orchid right now. Now, I'm going to do something that probably many of you will not have the courage to do. When you see as much as I do, you know. It will pretty much come with the territory and with the years. Usually on any orchid, the root system that is mostly dead is the oldest one. And in my case, the root system coming from this pseudobulb is pretty much all dead. So I'm gonna cut away all of the roots coming from this pseudobulb. I'm not gonna even check to see one by one. If you do want to do that, and I suggest you do if you are at the beginning, then do so. Check every root or selective roots and see where they're coming from, meaning what pseudobulb created them, and then just go ahead and spend your time removing all of these dead roots. Pretty meticulous work, but it is how you learn. I will not do that, and I will just go ahead and separate these roots that come from this pseudobulb from the newer roots. So if I do that, you will see what I mean. Okay, all of these roots are coming from this pseudobulb. You can see there is a difference between how these look like and how these look like. I have a lot more good roots on this side. Not all of them are good, but definitely these ones, they pretty much all look dead to me, even the ones that are white. See? They should not do that. So I will go ahead and completely cut these off. There we go, it doesn't look like anything was alive. These are dead too, look. So I can definitely cut these off. And now I will spend a bit more time on this section and see exactly how many good roots I have and keep them on my orchid. So I'll come back when I'm done with that. Alrighty, so I'm pretty much done with my orchid. It can be pretty hard to do a perfect job. It's pretty impossible. Do the best you can, and sometimes you'll have sections that are dead, as this one, but the main root is still alive. So just try to do the best you can. It's okay if you don't do a perfect job, just remove most of the dead roots and leave on most of the live roots. Alrighty, so I'm gonna go to the sink, give this orchid another rinse on its root system, and then get rid of all this medium on my working tray. Okay, so now that the root system is all sorted out, I like to disinfect it. I'm using hydrogen peroxide 3%. Using higher concentrations than this can actually damage the root system. And the purpose of this is to make sure I don't have any more snails or even their eggs. I've spent an entire year battling them, trying out all of the other methods, nothing worked, at least not entirely, so now every new orchid gets a hydrogen peroxide root spray. And ever since I'm doing this, I had no more issues. So I'm making sure to coat all of the root system and also in between the pseudobulbs. Snails can hide here as well. It's not necessary to spray the entire orchid. You want to get the base and the roots. Snails don't like dry places and they will not travel if they don't have moisture. After this, I'm just gonna let the orchid fizz a little bit. No need to rinse, no need to do anything, and the fizzing is absolutely normal. I do, however, want to do something else with this orchid. I discovered it has an infestation of spider mites. And yet again, I've battled spider mites for such a long while that I can see their damage from a distance. Do you see that on the underside I have grazing marks? That is very, very typical sign of spider mites. I think this leaf shows it more. There you go. So I'm going to treat this orchid for spider mites as well. And P.S. I'll link you down below to a video that I made which shows the most common pests, the ones that I had at least. I didn't have all of them. And how you can identify them or identify the damage and what you should do about it. And I'll also add a link to my homemade pesticide against spider mites. Again, I've tried a lot of things before coming to this. So I'm gonna spray the entire orchid with my mixture that you'll see in a video and come back when I'm done. And my orchid is ready to be repotted. As I was saying, I am into semi-hydroponics for my orchid, and that's what I'm potting my orchid in. Now, the step with the root preparation and the checking for pests and taking action against pests, that is something you should do with any orchid, no matter the family or the type of the orchid. When you get a new orchid, it's best to quarantine it for a while, keep it under observation, checking it for pests and all of those things, and of course repotting it into your preferred medium. It's not uncommon to find all sorts of things wrong with new orchids. But now that my orchid is prepared, she will definitely not be placed together with the other orchids, but at least now she has a shot at a better life, hopefully. So I'm just gonna pot it up and come back when I'm done. And my orchid is now done. Now, some sources will advise you not to water orchids after repotting for a week, even 2, even a month. I've read a month. Well, that's really your choice. All I can tell you is from experience that this rule made things worse, not better, in most of the cases. I can also tell you that in the case of intergenerics and oncidiums, just don't. They love water. We're going through the trouble of getting them rid of snails and spider mites, making sure they have proper medium, they have no more dead roots, and then we desiccate them, just don't do it. Alrighty, so what do we do with this orchid from now on, because we don't know what it is? Well, we're gonna play it safe. We're gonna maintain it in bright shade, not direct sunshine. We can give it early morning direct sunshine or even late afternoon sunshine. Even low light plants do benefit from a little bit of sunshine. Make it filter, make sure the temperature around the orchid is not very high, maintain it intermediate rather. Use a regular fertilizing regime for this orchid because there aren't many oncidiums and intergenerics that prefer winter rest, not that I know of, on the market at least. Make sure that the medium is never bone dry for too long. Oncidiums generally do not like that at all. Within a year or a little more than a year, depending on health, we can see the first flowers and we can determine what this orchid is. In the case of the other orchids, the Phalaenopsis, Cattleyas, and Dendrobiums, we should just try to follow their care needs, at least the basic ones. For the main part, they will all behave the same, no matter the color or variety. And with everything, just try to stay on the safe side. Do not push it with extreme temperatures, extreme sunshine, extreme fertilizer. One thing that I would like to add is that sometimes you will find remains of flowers on discounted orchids, and you can actually tell by these flowers. I don't want to handle this too much because I see aphids, I think. So you can tell a little bit about your orchid by looking at the dried flower. And especially if you know shapes and colors, you can identify your orchid as such. And my orchid, you guessed it, it's a Nellie Eiler. Like I didn't go through enough frustration with this orchid. But honestly, she was under a bench. People forgot they had her. I went to the cashier and asked, how much is this one? And they looked at me like, where did you find that? And, they said, okay, you can have it for €4. And she was in pretty okay shape. The pseudobulbs are plump and all of that, but I'm sure they will go shriveled on me. That's okay. I'm gonna do my best with her. She's the finickiest, one of the finickiest intergenerics you can have. So that's not a good start. But hey, I'm doing my best. We'll see what happens, and thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget that I'll link you down below in the description to all sorts of information, more on semi-hydroponics as well. So before you have questions, just check the description. I might have already answered questions. If not, just leave me a comment down below. And with that said, thank you for watching. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, give this video a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe to my channel for regular orchid videos, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. And with that said, I'll see you all next time. Bye!